This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And folks, it is September 14th, 2021. I want to say a special happy birthday to my nephew, Ruben, who has turned, let me see, holy cow, he'll be 33? Will he really be? No, 32. 32. He's born in 89. Shit, where's the time go? Well, happy birthday to Ruben on this episode, turning 32. And I just got to say, folks, love having anybody on the show. My show is open, and I had this particular author brought to my attention, asked if I could do an interview, and I said, absolutely. He is the author of the book of Top 10 Horror List. I have Charles F. Rosenay on here today. How do you do, Charles?
I'm doing great. Maybe we should also send out birthday wishes to Ensign Chekhov himself, Walter Koenig, celebrating his 85th birthday today.
85 years. Nice. 85 years young. So what do you have on your shirt? I got Miss 45 on mine.
Mine is, I love yours. Mine is a haunted attraction in Connecticut called Fright Haven, which is coming through backwards, which I founded and created and still act there occasionally, but no longer own it. But it's a cool place. It's in New England. It's one of the largest, scariest, and probably best indoor haunted houses. Big haunted house guy.
Yeah, you got to word that carefully, because you could say outdoor haunted house or outhouse haunted.
There's some outhouses that are very haunted. I'm sure of that.
Anyway, great to have you on here today. Thanks for reaching out. And and I'm going to try to hook you up with some other podcasters so we can get this out there. It's funny, I was looking you up because you mentioned you'd done some acting, and you did a movie called The Sadist with Tom Savini. Talk about that experience.
Well, I'm really proud of that role because I've done a lot of small stuff, a lot of horror shorts and stuff that doesn't get beyond YouTube or Vimeo or however it is. But that one, made it to the theaters. Savini, I'd known for years, though he didn't know me, from convention appearances and all that. But what's awesome about that is if you type in the film and you look at the trailer, I'm the first voice you hear. I'm the dad. And my son goes off, into a vacation or a hunting day with his uncle. And, it's downhill from there. But, I wish him bon voyage, have a good day with your uncle kind of thing. And it's my first voices on there. And now, mind you, I just did a film called Night at Eagle Inn, which hasn't even been released yet. It has its theatrical coming end of the month. And mine is the first voice you hear in that one too, but very, very different because I play cross-dressing. My role is called the debutante, and it's one of these really creepy voices that you hear right in the beginning of the trailer. So, I don't get a lot of screen time in either one of the movies, but I get the first voice in the trailers, which is always cool. I love acting, not only in the haunted attractions, but you give me a horror film, say I want you for a day or an hour or a month, I'm there. There's nothing more fun.
So I haven't seen The Sadist. I did watch the trailer. Did you get to work with Savini at all in that?
No.
Okay.
His time was very short, as you can imagine. He gets a little more moolah than the other people in the film. Frank Libby, who did the film, who's the main actor, the son in it, did a good job of getting him to be in it, but I think it was only a one-day shoot, and mine was an indoor shoot. Mine was completely indoors with the wife and the kid, and his was an outdoor shoot, a woods scene. So no, we never did, which is funny because I'm also in a non-horror thing called I don't know if you remember the show Flight of the Conchords. It was a comedy on HBO, and I'm in the second season in an episode called Prime Minister. It's a bunch of lookalikes. I play an Elton John lookalike,
Hmm.
while the main characters who are Flight of the Concord play Simon and Garfunkel. It turns out Art Garfunkel's in the episode. I didn't even know it till it aired because I wasn't on the set with him. Never got to see him. I was one of two Eltons, and the other one is the comedian, the actor Patton Oswalt. So I
Hmm.
was on set with him a lot. Um, but yeah, that happens a lot. You know, I was on the set with Kristen Wiig and what's his name? The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Steve
Um,
Carell.
no, what I love about Mary, he's been in so many
Oh,
things.
Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller, thank you. So I was on set outdoors with Ben Stiller and Kristen Wiig as an extra, and it took everything in my power not to say hello, not to push myself into a scene, not to ask for an autograph because you're an actor in these and you do cameo or background or extra work, but you're a fan first, and it's so hard not to just wiggle in there and say, hey, let's get a picture together.
Did you succeed?
I did not do that. I controlled myself.
I'm going to tell you, it can be hard, but I'll tell you, and I've told this story a million times on here, but I'll tell it again. Um, I'm 49. I've lived here in New Brunswick my whole life. And it wasn't until 2017 that I went to my first con. And how it came about is I had interviewed Lisa Langlois from the movie Class of 1984.
Yeah.
And it was her second time on the show. We got talking about travel. And she asked what was stopping me. And then she made me, as Marlon Brando would say in The Godfather, an offer I could not refuse. She invited me to assist her at Horrorama in Toronto. I couldn't say no. And I love Class of 1984. I've interviewed 5 different people from the movie, and Lisa and I have become very good friends. But she invited me to Toronto. She showed me Toronto and how to use the subways and streetcars and all of that. And that was my first con experience, was at her table, taking pictures with her and the fans, keeping her table arranged. And I had a blast with her, and it opened up a whole new world for me.
Yeah.
Yep. And
How far how far is Toronto from you?
I'm an hour ahead of Toronto in terms of time zone.
Hmm.
Yep. So it takes a few hours to fly there, but not long.
Yeah.
Yep.
Horror cons. I'm a big convention person. That you probably Googled and saw that I produced the paranormal conventions here in this area and the Beetle conventions. But I've attended so many, Chiller Theater, which is a world famous one. And I'm actually going to be signing the book there. I'm a guest there. And I'm a guest at DeadCon, the Dead Convention in Fort Wayne,
As
Indiana.
opposed to the live one.
Right, exactly. Well, I'll tell you, what's great is the fact that you attend these conventions and you're a fan, you get other people's autographs, and now finally I'll be on the other side of the table actually signing, copies of this sucker and personalizing it. I got already things like these are cutesy things I can write and all that. So I'm really looking forward to that. We were talking about, films with actors and trying to get pictures with them. There was one film I was in called The Truth About Lying.
Hmm.
Never really went anywhere. I'm in a few scenes. It's a comedy, but one of the main stars is Fran Kranz. I think you probably know the name from Cabin in the Woods.
I
Because
haven't. Oh yeah, I know the movie, but
Yeah, so he's more of a comedy guy than a horror guy. But the fact that I was a big fan of his from Cabin in the Woods, and I was in a movie with him which was a comedy. I had to take a picture with him, and he was really cool about it. But that's easy to do when they're isolated and offset.
Hmm.
On set, you never do that. But that's so cool that you've gotten close with some of the people that you've interviewed. That's really awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I've become friends with a few. Lisa is now a friend. Nancy McLaughlin from Jason Lives is somebody I talk to uh, bi-weekly on the phone. And there are others. Those are two that come immediately to mind.
Yeah.
But but I've done three horror ramas out of Toronto. I've done one Toronto Comic Con,
Hmm.
and I'm going to do my first Frightmare in the Falls this late October.
And where's
So
that?
that's in Niagara Falls.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm looking forward to doing that because Horrorama is canceled this year, not because of COVID. It's just when restrictions started to lift, they just didn't have time to book people. So
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah. So I'm
Uh,
going to do. Actually, it was Lisa that suggested Frightmare. So so I think I'm going to do my first Frightmare in the Falls. I've got 13 guests lined up right now. So, but I'm probably usually I try to see everybody at a con. But autographs I find are starting to get outrageously expensive, and I heard it's because of The Walking Dead starting to do them.
yeah. I
Yeah.
th- I think it's more of a case of, some of these conventions, they need a lot of guests. There was a
Mhm.
time we could do one or two guests and it was okay. Five or 10, guests, there's 50, 100 guests at a con now. It's insane. So a promoter really can't afford to have these guests pay their fee, fly them in, put them in a hotel, unless they're charging a little more for the autographs, and that either goes back to the promoter or it's a guarantee for the actor or artist who's doing the signing to reach a certain plateau of pay so that they can afford to be there. It's sadly it's the way it is. I remember when conventions would just fly in a person, pay them a fee, and they would sign autographs for free. I mean, there was a time that people I did a Beatles convention, was it mid 80s, and we flew in Davy Jones of the Monkees to be a guest. And he sat there. We contracted him to do an hour of signing, and he sat there for 2.5 hours because he wanted to make sure that each and every fan got an autograph before they left, and didn't charge for a single one. Those days are long, long gone, though.
Yeah. Well, Lisa was a wonderful case because I remember sitting at her table. She didn't know how much to charge, but she saw people. If people were military who were fought for our country and whatnot, or people with disabilities, she always gave a reduced price to. She was very, very open to stuff like that, and she was lovely to collaborate with on that first con. But I haven't had any bad experiences with people. I find that I enjoyed the horror ramas more than the Comic Con, and nothing against the Comic Con. They had some wonderful cosplay there. The guests were nice, but here was the big difference I found. The big difference was with a small con, it's more intimate. What I found with the Toronto Comic Con, um, like I was in line for 19 minutes to meet Ron Perlman. I was never in a line that long for anybody for Horrorama, and and then another thing too, and nobody was rude. Nobody at Comic Con was rude, but I found with you can tell which guests are really, really enjoying being there.
Hmm.
And there were two that made a big impression on me, and at Comic Con. One was John Rhys Davies from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
He would always ask people what they did for a living, you know, and where they're from.
Wow.
And I remember I got him to sign my Raiders of the Lost Ark Blu-ray, and I got a picture with him. He put his arm around me and started going like this into my side to get me to react.
Wow.
And he was just very playful that way. He was one, and the other one that made an impression on me was um oh, why am I flinching on his name? From Major League. I gotta look now. I gotta look that up.
Pierce Brown. No. Corbin Bernsen.
Yeah, Corbin
Dude,
Burson. Thank goodness you got that before me.
because he's in the book. Corbin gave us a top 10 list for the book. He was in a horror movie. He was involved with Bill Moseley, Chop Top,
Mhm.
called Dead Air. Not a very well-known horror film, but a great one that he was very heavy in promoting. And at the time, I hit him up for top 10 list, and also did a promotion with him to help promote the film. And he's a great guy. I'm glad you said. I'm glad you mentioned the film Major League, because it could have been a bunch of people. Martin Sheen could have been a bunch of people, but when you said he was a great guy, it had to be Corbin Bernsen, because he is. Yeah, he's mint. He's a really great one.
I
And
haven't had him on here yet, but one thing I do remember about him, his handler was with him, and I guess his handler had taught him how to do selfies.
okay,
He was like, "This is getting addictive." It's like I could do this all day. Anybody else want a selfie?
that's funny. That's
He had
funny.
a good attitude. And again, I'm not criticizing anybody else, you know, but those are the two that stood out to me. They were the closest to the Horrorama experience, because Horrorama, I found everybody was like that, you
That's
know.
that's what you want it to be. You want them to be welcoming. I mean, these are our heroes. You want them to be friendly. And when one goes that extra inch and says, "Hey, where you from?" or "I love your shirt," anything like that, you wind up walking away and loving them maybe a little more, or not losing. If someone is, I did a signing with President Carter, Jimmy Carter.
Hmm.
He was in town, and I said, I gotta get an autograph. And it was like they threw him the book, he signed it, and it was like an assembly line. He didn't even look up at the person he signed for. And you remember those things. You remember if someone wasn't friendly, or if they didn't take, at least look you in the eyes, at least say hello at the very least. But most of them, if they're at a con, most of them are cool.
Some of my best experiences, Lisa Langlois for number one.
Yep.
You know, she was, I still see her when I go, like, even for, I said I would not go to Toronto this year unless Lisa was, she's not going to be at Frightmare, but I always like to connect with her, and we usually do dinner or whatnot. And I asked if she was okay with that, you know, with vaccines and this and that. And I'm double vaxxed. But she said, yeah, sure. So I'm still very connected with her. So Lisa is wonderful. I remember Vernon Wells was a real tease, and when I met him, actually he was in the table just to the side of Lisa and mine, you know, and
Mhm.
you know,
It's Greg, it's funny you mentioned Lisa, because in my book, it's the book of top 10 horror lists, and we got 100 celebrities.
mhm.
And Lisa gave me a list, and it was bumped because the last week before we went to print, something else came in, and I bumped her and Barry Maguire. Do you know Barry Maguire? He's a
Why
singer.
would you bump Lisa's though?
I know, because we have a lot of scream queens, and I thought, well, if I'm going to do a sequel to this,
Uh-huh.
I want some really great scream queens. And it was just random. It was the editor said, well, take this one out and take this one out. And I said, why? And they shrugged their shoulders and said, I don't know, it's equal to the same size chapter as the person coming in. And I said, all right, fine, fine. But it's really crazy that we're talking about her. And I think she's Canadian too. Yes.
Oh
She's really
yeah.
nice. Yeah. Yeah. She's probably Canada's #1 scream queen. If I would have to, do a rating on
I
that.
never thought about that.
Yeah.
But I got a ton of autographed stuff from her here.
Yeah.
She and I send each other Christmas gifts. That's how close friends we are.
Wow.
Actually, she sent me a Santa hat for my cat, which my cat is not thankful for.
Yeah, I bet.
Had a little beard on it, and I tried to put it on him. He wasn't having
No,
it.
no way. Well, Lisa, if you're watching, we're going to do a sequel, and I promise you will be in the sequel. We've already got like 20, 30 cool people for the sequel. And you know what? I might be hitting you up with some suggestions for the next book, and we'll credit you as a contributor.
Please, yeah. I could give you some names of people you could reach out to.
Yeah, yeah. I
Jeepers,
love.
I'm a co-producer on 13 Fanboy.
Oh, wow.
Why not ask me to do a list?
Well, that's true. You're a celebrity. Absolutely.
Well, I'm
Uh,
not a big celebrity, but 13 Fanboy's coming out in October.
yeah. There you
I
go.
got the tote bag and I got
Sweet.
a shirt, but I'm a co-producer and my picture is going to be in it. My picture's in a scene with Tracy Savage because, well, in part 3, I remember her doll face very well.
Mhm.
I had a big Tracy crush, and I
Yeah.
had the pleasure in 2 interviews of telling her that.
Oh, so cool.
And
So
she's
cool.
a lovely person. But yeah, Lisa is an absolute lovely soul. I'm glad to call her my friend.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
she
so
is
great
a
to be able to do that with, people who they're like us, it's just that they've been on the screen or they've been in concerts,
yeah.
so many of the people. I'll tell you how I got a lot of the rock stars that are in this. I mean, we're
Mhm.
talking horror, of course, but this is a celebrity book. And as many horror people I have rock stars, I have athletes, I have musicians. Um, in 2010, I produced, Greg, what I thought was going to be the music version of Comic Con. I produced a show called Rock Con. It
Mhm.
was in New Jersey at the Meadowlands.
Mhm.
And we had, Tommy James and Al Jardine from the Beach Boys, Mary Wilson from the Supremes, God, bless her soul. A lot of really cool people, 100 rock stars. And so I thought, man, this show is going to draw 10,000 people. And, it's going to forever. I'm going to be doing rock cons for the rest of my life. Well, we had 1,000 people. I lost a fortune, and I get it. It was the first time, a lot of people hadn't heard about it. We did it in the summer, which wasn't the greatest time. In Jersey, everyone's at the Jersey Shore. I got all the reasons why. But anyway, never did it again. But I made a lot of friends. Like you in the horror business, I have a lot of friends in the horror business. I have a lot
Mhm.
of friends in the rock and roll business, having produced Beatle conventions all those years. And so, we got, all these cool people in here, and it really weighs out. So for every William Shatner who's in the book, for every Ed Asner, there's Gary Puckett, for Gary Puckett in the Union Gap. There's a Ron Dante who sang Sugar Sugar with the Archies. There's music people along with all the other people. I think that's what's so cool about the book.
Did you
I
get Tony Basil?
it's so funny you would ask. She never answered, and she is somebody who is also has a steep history with the Monkees. She danced with Davy Jones in the movie Head, and I've contacted her about doing an interview for a Monkees radio show, and she didn't respond to that either. So I don't know if it's something she just isn't interested in, or I don't know.
I did get her on the show.
Oh, wow.
Yep, I got her on the show. She asked me a few questions about my reach and this and that, and I'm associated with CHSR on university campus.
Uh-huh.
But I got her on. I got her on Valentine's Day 2020 before the lockdown,
Wow.
and I had a wonderful interview with her. and I surprised her with a few of my questions, which was nice. Yeah, I could send her a text to see if I could arrange something. I don't know. I'll have to see.
I'm sending it to a management company, and the response I got was, because I wrote back recently and said I haven't heard from Tony, and the response was, well, if you haven't heard, then the answer is probably no. I don't know if she even got it. Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you send it to handlers or management or people, and if there's no monetary value or there's no future considerations, sometimes they don't even pass it along. So
Well, I've text with Tony.
oh wow.
So yeah, so I will. I haven't done it in a while,
Mhm.
but I know she made Valentine's Day a much happier time for me
That's
because
great.
I hated Valentine's Day until I had her on the show on a Valentine's
Wow.
Day.
Wow.
So I had a great chat with her. I know she's very no nonsense. I know that, but if you know your stuff, you've got her hooked, you know. And I'm happy to say I've surprised her with a few of my questions, and she liked that, you know. And some of the stuff you do an interview where you bring stuff up that they're not ready for, but they're not ready for in a positive way.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
They're not asked the same questions they're always asked. That's always a plus.
Well, I brought up, for example, she had done something to do with one of Ralph Bakshi's animations, and her choreography was used for one of the dancing for I forget which movie it was, and I brought that up, and she was like, "Wow, yeah, her in the lockers or something like that."
It wasn't Fritz the cat, I hope.
It wasn't Fritz. I love Fritz the Cat. I've had Ralph Bakshi on twice as well. And Bakshi was not an easy catch. But after that first interview, you know, he really enjoyed. He said to me, he said that he's been interviewed by a lot of people. He said this was one of the best interviews he had ever done.
Wow. That's
And it
great.
because
Great flag.
he because at first he turned me down, and I approached him for the 45th anniversary of Fritz the Cat.
Wow.
And then I had him back the following year for the 45th anniversary of Heavy Traffic, and he came back on again. I wasn't able to get him after that. I thought I was going to have him on to do something with Coonskin, his next film, but nothing happened with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether he just, you know, enough's enough. But I reached out. He asked me to, but nothing happened. But I got him twice, so I'm not complaining, you know. And it,
Yeah. There's people you shoot for and you maybe never get. There's people that you know that someday down the road, hopefully you'll get them. And there's others you get and they live up to everything you expect. And then there's others you get who, they're all right, just all right. We got some interviews in here, and I'm not going to, not interviews, a top 10 list. I'm not going to mention names, but, they didn't really take it to heart and they just gave me a list. But they were a big enough name that I wanted to include them in the book. Do you know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Most of the lists gave reasons why, and those were the best lists. And some of the people who gave us the best lists, people I wouldn't have known that they were going to do such a great job. An example that comes to mind is Eddie Deason. Eddie
I've
was
interviewed him.
He's a great guy, right? He's great. He's
Yeah.
the best. I love Eddie. And for the people who are tuning in who don't know, of course, Eugene
Yeah,
from
Greece.
Greece in 1941, and I Want to Hold Your Hand, and Polar Express, and SpongeBob Voices. Anyway, Eddie's a sweetheart, and
Mm.
he's a fan like us, and he's a great guy. And his list was so good that he's actually one of four lists in the book that I would use as an example to send out to other celebrities to try to get their list. The four I used were Eddie Deason, Elliot Easton from The Cars, who's a great fan guy, loves the horror, loves rock and roll.
The Cars, the band.
Yeah. Elliot Easton was the
Oh,
guitarist.
I've got everything the Cars have done on CD and vinyl.
He's great. He's a sweetheart. We'll
Put
have
me
to
in touch.
we'll
Put me in
exchange
touch with them.
we'll exchange contacts for sure. And
I
the other,
would love to get somebody from the Cars. We lost Rick Ocasek.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I
yeah,
love the Cars.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah. And before that, the other two were, as we mentioned, Corbin Burnson. And the
Mhm.
fourth one, and she's not with us anymore, gave me an amazing list. And if I say Trilogy of Terror, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Karen Black, great actress, and no longer with us. She was in one of the Rob Zombie movies. And
Yeah, House of a Thousand Corpses.
she gave me an amazing list that was actually, I'll tell you something interesting. When I would send out a template for other celebrities, I would send a list, and I realized by sending Karen Black's list out that I might have been intimidating some of these people because her list was so long, so exhaustive. She gave such great reasons for her 10 choices that if I sent out to some people, they might have said, oh, I can't write anything that long. I don't want to, they probably passed on being part of the book because she did such a great list. The other person who I would never send out as an example, but gave me an amazing list, and you would never know it, is John Lennon's sister, Julia Baird. And we go back to the music industry.
Hmm.
She's been a friend for many years. And I said, I'm doing this horror book. Can you give me a top 10 list? And she said, I'm not really into horror movies, but leave it with me for a little while. Greg, she came up with this, oh, a list of 10 horror aspects of Shakespeare's plays. And this is like, I'm telling you, like a thesis. Like if you were going to graduate school and had to write an amazing document on, Shakespeare, that's how great this list is. And, so you just never know where these lists are coming from. And that's the great thing about the book. We have William Shatner. We have Ed Asner, who passed away. We have John Lennon's sister and Pete Best, the first drummer of the Beatles, and a bunch of scream queens and a bunch of people, who I'm just honored to have. Bill Moseley is in it with a great list. He's very, very, he's a brilliant guy. He writes brilliantly, and his list is amazing. But we talked about, before we went on the air, Sarah Karloff.
Hmm.
Sarah's a beautiful person, and I love her
Yeah.
very much. But she said, Charles, I'm not a horror fan. And I said, you got to give me a list. I want you in my first book. You got to be in there. You're going to love this. You ready for this? She gave me a list of 10 things that scare her. And the last thing on her list was, you ready for this? Having to do this list.
Oh, she's a hoot.
That's great, right? That's great. And people don't know, we talk a few minutes off the air before we go on, and you mentioned some names, and you mentioned Sarah, but you also mentioned a relative of Audrey Hepburn.
Yep.
And before we went on the air, I said, I gotta tell Greg the story. People ask me, what are my favorite horror movies? What movies scared me? This and that. The only movie that ever gave me nightmares as a kid was when I came home from seeing Wait Until Dark
I
in the
love that film.
Oh, I love it so much. And it's not a horror movie, it's a home
Hmm.
invasion movie more than anything else.
Hmm.
Alan Arkin is like real evil in that. He played against type, and she's just amazing as the blind girl. But for some reason, I went to bed, and all night I thought people were breaking into my house. I was half asleep, half awake as a kid. And that's the only movie that ever gave me nightmares.
Yeah, I got one of my bucket list on this year too. I was supposed to have this person on before lockdown, and it never happened. And when we went into lockdown, because I used to do these at the station,
Right.
thank goodness Nancy McLaughlin from Jason Lives had said to me, if I can do Zoom, you can do Zoom. And
Wow.
I had done 30 interviews in 2020, and then lockdown happened. I went the rest of the year. I work as a cleaner, so I still working, but I missed doing my show.
Sure.
So you're number 96 I've done this year, and
I know. I wanted to be 100.
no, but I'll tell you, one of the things I was most worried about is getting a particular person back in contact with me, and that was Nancy Allen, and I got her. Because I wanted to bend her ear about Dress to Kill, which I loved her in, you know.
Oh, I love that. I'm such a big Brian De Palma fan, and
Mhm.
Phantom of the Paradise is one of my favorite films
I've
of
interviewed
all time.
four people from Phantom of the Paradise,
Wow.
including two of those bandmates.
Really? Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, and I had one of the crow dancers on as well,
Oh, wow.
Sarah Toga Ballantine. I had
Uh,
Archie Hahn,
yeah,
Peter Elbling, both from
the juicy
Juicy
fruits.
Fruits and one of all those other bands. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I had oh, cheaper. Why was I blanking on this? Because it took me 2 years to get her. Jessica Harper. I had her.
My gosh, wow. Yeah.
It
What a
took me.
sing. What you know what? The soundtrack is just as good as the film and just as good as the actors. And that's for people who haven't seen it. I'm guessing people who watch your show have seen it. But if they haven't, it's a combination of Faust, a combination of Dorian Gray, Phantom of the Opera. It's Frankenstein. It's got so many, horror. It should have been a stage play, and it
Mhm.
should have been one of the great. I don't understand. I went to see it when I was a kid. Always, everything's as a kid, as a double feature with Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I've interviewed Little Nell from that.
Well, I'm mentioning it because I haven't seen that. I hadn't seen either one of those movies. Saw them as a double feature. Walked away saying, "Rocky Horror. Wow, I love the soundtrack, but it doesn't blow me away." Whereas with Phantom of the Paradise, I love the soundtrack and it blew me away. Now I've since obviously seen Rocky Horror so many more times because when I saw it then there was no interaction. It was pre the what it became. It was pre Midnight Cult status. So that elevated it to another level. And Phantom of the Paradise still remains one of my favorite movies of all time. And I don't. How did we get onto that? What was the what triggered that?
Who knows? But I mentioned Nancy Allen, and you
Oh,
mentioned
Brian De
the
Palma. That's
Brian De
right.
Palma. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But going back to what I was saying before, though, about con experiences, though, like I've had a lot of great con experiences, like I was the first to interview Lynn Laurie on a podcast, and I love the fact she's a hugger. I met her both days at Horrorama,
Mhm.
and I finally got her on the show this year. And let me see, Dee Wallace was fun to meet. It was the first time I met somebody at a con that had a debit machine where you could make your purchases,
Oh wow.
Yeah, and see who else. Because Horrorama goes after a lot of niche people too. But no, I've had all good experiences with everybody I've met at Horrorama. It's put on by Chris Alexander. Uh, Somebody I think you should get for the book because he used to write for Fangoria magazine
Hmm,
and he
hmm.
directs movies. So he's somebody you should get in touch with.
Oh
And
cool.
yeah, Louis Serraz of Suspect Video. Actually, Chris Alexander directed this as among one of his things. It's Necropolis Legion.
Uh huh.
I had her on my show. That's
Hmm,
Allie Chapel,
hmm.
and I'm looking forward. I met her all 3 years at Horrorama, but she also is going to be in costume at Frightmare in the Fall. So,
Oh wow.
yep. So I'm looking forward to meeting her. Well, I've already met her, but nonetheless, you get my point.
I do. I'll give you my Dee Wallace story real quick. There used to be a convention in Maryland called Horror Find,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy who ran it, Mike, has since passed away. So the show it doesn't happen anymore. And Alice Cooper, everyone you could think of was a guest there, and they would have every guest as a panelist at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the night to judge the costume contests. And one year, Dee Wallace Stone was the hostess. She was the MC.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the panel, not because I published a book yet, that hasn't come out yet, but because, as you know, or I hope you know, I produced the Dracula tours to Transylvania.
Yeah, you were telling me. Yeah.
Every year since 1998, we bring groups of tourists, travelers to the haunted land of Vlad and Dracula. And we
Mm-hmm.
actually spend Halloween night in Dracula's castle, which is amazing. But because of that, I was, a minor celebrity. And we were co-sponsors. Horrifying would sponsor the tour would sponsor Horrifying. And it was one of the really great conventions. Doug Bradley and Jack Ketchum and Tony Todd, all the greats were always his guests. And for a few years, I was on the panel, and I would always think of clever things to say because I'm a funny guy, believe it or not, and I would like sort of hand notes or whisper what Dee should say. So at some points of the night, she would turn around like, "Do you have something for me to say?" Or and she was so great and so wonderful, and she. They promised me a list from her, but I haven't gotten it yet. So that'll probably be in the sequel with Lisa. But we don't
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about the sequel. Can we tell people how to get the book while we're
Actually,
listening?
tell me how to get the book because I want an autographed copy.
Great,
I
great.
want first dibs.
Awesome, awesome. So brand new, hot off the presses. It's the 100 top 10 list from celebrities. It's officially called Monsters, Celebrities, Actors, Athletes, and Rock Stars, but we're promoting it as the Book of Top 10 Horror Lists. And the website is www.bookoftop10horrorlists.com with the number 10. And the book is obviously available on Amazon. It's available through the publisher. But if you get it from me, I get to sign it for you. So if you go to the website, it says the phone number and the email for me, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll gladly sign either the hardcover or the soft cover. And there's me in the back um, as my horror host persona, Crypt Master Chucky.
Mm-hmm. Can I
So yeah,
call your number and ask you if your refrigerator is running?
you can do that, and you'll go support me, right? Always,
And
always the danger of putting a phone number out in public, right?
is your refrigerator running?
Yes, it is. Why?
You better run out and catch it. In the news today, Charles Rosenay was found passed out, and they told his doctor, and when he awoke in the hospital, he was trying to catch his refrigerator.
Chasing after the old fridge.
And I'm like guilty, like hope they don't trace that back to me. Yeah, I would like to get your book. I'd like to get a signed copy. So
The
yeah,
honor.
and I would love to set you up with some other people who I think would enjoy connecting with that. Genevieve Rossi, who's done a lot of indie horror, including directing Attack of the Killer Chickens. She'd be somebody good for that. James Balsamo, who I got on tomorrow night, who's actually a cameo in 9 of his movies, and I just shot my footage on my phone
Wow.
and sent to him. Yeah, one of them played at the Chinese theater. And
Wow.
I'm in scenes with Eric Roberts because he's watching my scenes on television.
Yeah.
So, but James is somebody. Did you ever approach Aline Dietz from The Exorcist?
No, that's a
She
great one.
was she was Pazuzu.
Right. Right.
I
That's a
can
good.
connect you with her.
Cool. Cool. We will connect with this. I'll give you some of the names
Sure.
who are currently in here. Um, so what's really great about this is the whole it starts with an intro, and it tells about me and why I even did this, which is
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting in itself, and how I go about. And then it's got at the end my horror roles, the things that I've been in. But for as far as contributors who've put in this, there's only one that I got that I didn't get myself, and I got it posthumously, was Forrest Ackerman from famous monsters of filmland. But then there's people like John Amplis, Night of the Living Dead, Ed Asner, who we just lost him. Mary Tyler Moore, of course. Corbin Burnson we mentioned, Pete Best, the drummer of the original drummer of the Beatles we mentioned. I don't know if you know the name Debbie Branning. I'd love to get her on your show. She's one of these ghost hunters from Arizona. She's written a ton of books. She would make for a great guest for you.
Okay.
Do you remember Rona Martin's Laugh-In, or is that before your time?
I know
TV.
Laughing. That had Goldie Hawn in it. Yeah.
Right. So Ruth Buzzy, who was the other famous female on that, gave us a list. Uh, some other lists came from Kevin Clement, who was the producer of Chiller Theater, the actual horror convention in New Jersey, which is now a big celebrity show, which is pop culture. The actress Sybil Danning,
Mm-hmm.
who's been in so many stuff things. Joe Dante, the
Love Joe.
Gremlins and all that. My gosh, so many cool people. Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, Dennis Dunaway from Alice Cooper, Sharon Farrell from the movie It's Alive. Just classic stuff. Gloria Gaynor, the disco star. You get it. I'm only halfway through, but the late Jack Ketchum, who wrote a lot of amazing horror stuff. Red, and you know who he is, and Joe Lansdale. So we got a lot of horror writers, a lot of horror actors, pop culture people, and it's just fascinating to not only see their lists, but to see if our favorite horror movies or horror themes match their list. And at the end, I do a compilation of which was the favorite horror movie of everybody's. I do a top 10 of their top 10s. And whatever, I just wanted to mention because I just thought of it. Some of the other things that are really cool are people really gave it a lot of thought and said, well, I don't want to just do horror movies like Sarah did, things that scare her. Someone else did the 10 sexiest scenes in horror movies, the 10 best soundtracks from horror movies that you don't know of. I think one of those two is from the guy from the B-52s. I forgot his name. So I'm really blessed that all these people came through, and then the temptation was originally there to just do horror people. And I thought it would have more of a reach and have, more of a guys if it was all celebrities, and I think that's really worked because the interest has been there from Beatle collectors and Star Trek collectors. And I'm able to market it to more Facebook groups and to more, people, because if they're not just horror fans, they're still going to like the book. But us horror fans are going to love it.
Here's a question for you. Do you remember the first horror film you ever saw growing up?
Great question. All right, you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show you something. I haven't shown this on any of the shows I've done. This is me as a kid in the Bronx, New York, with my Aurora Monster models.
Okay.
And behind me is a poster of the Beatles. So two of my favorite loves growing up, the Beatles and Monsters. I lived in the Bronx, and my parents were really great to me, and they were pop culture people too. AM rock and roll was on all day. They said the only thing we haven't exposed you to is monster movies. And growing up in New York, we only had like 3 or 4 or 5 channels. And there was one channel which had the $1 Million Movie. The $1 Million Movie would be on at 8 o'clock, and it would be on Monday, and it would repeat Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It would be on the same movie every night. So we probably watched, I don't know, Mutiny on the Bounty or Casablanca, whatever. And Mom says, The Bride of Frankenstein is going to be on. And the name of it alone scared me. I'm this little pisher from New York, who's out playing stickball, and I don't think I was in school yet, but all right, I'll watch it. And then I hear the beginning of the music, and I cover my eyes, and I keep my eyes covered for 2 hours or however long it was on with the commercials. And Mom's not happy about this. She wants me to love horror movies as much as she does. She's telling me these names: Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Peter Lorre, Lon Chaney. I don't know what she's talking about. And I say, I don't want to see it again. And the next night, Well, she leaves the lights on. Instead, she did it a little differently, made the popcorn, got blankets for us, and she said, "We're going to watch it again." This is child abuse at this stage.
Hmm.
I watched it like this. I watched it, but not completely. I like threw the fingers and I asked questions and
Hmm.
I said, and as it went on, the next day I said, "Mom, are we going to watch this again?" And she asked, "Only if you want to." And I did. And by the fourth night, I couldn't tell time. I said, "When is it coming on? I want to see it again." And she took out a TV guide because in those days, that was the Bible. There was no
Hmm.
cable. You couldn't watch a movie on request. You couldn't watch it on demand. There's no YouTube, no Netflix, no DVDs, no VCRs. The only time you could watch something is when it was on. And we got out the TV guide and we saw, wow, Dracula's coming up, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, whatever movies were coming up, she circled. And we had Chiller Theater and Creature Features, and I was addicted. It took me a day to get beyond that first scare, but in answer to your question, and that was a long way to answer it, but it was such a good question. I needed to do that. The first movie I ever saw that was Bride of Frankenstein.
You know what? For me, I don't remember the first, but I remember I used to be petrified of scary movies. And it's funny because I love stuff like Clash of the Titans, Conan
Yeah,
the Barbarian. My older brother would always say, "Look, if you can watch all the blood in Conan the Barbarian, you can watch a slasher film." But I mean, Jason and Freddy weren't fighting Conan, you know?
right, right,
You know, I think
right.
Conan would be a formidable opponent. But anyway, I remember every Friday night, and we used to have our cousins used to come over, and because I had an uncle that used to go fishing and whatnot, and adults would do something. And Friday night there would always be a horror film on, and I've just recently come in connection with what some of those were. I know, I'm sure Night of the Living Dead played, Salem's Lot played. I remember some images from Salem's Lot. I remember images from Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, and I remember images from Horror High. And I had Pat Carty, who played in Horror High, on the show, and I got to talk to him about my first impressions when I saw him. And he was a great guy to talk to. And these movies frightened me. And but yet I'd always sit there and put myself through it like it was self-torture, you know? I always, and still to this day, I believe this. I believe in good over evil. You know, I was brought up in a Christian family. I hate a lot of the pure flicks movies, but I do believe in the standard traditional good over evil. And I'm kind of like, I hated the movie The Mist, for example. I hate the
Terrible ending.
ending. I
Terrible
hate
ending.
I hated
Awful.
the ending of the movie.
Me too.
Like
Me
it
too.
happens just afterwards. And so many people are saying, "What a brilliant ending." I'm like, "What a shit ending to happen when it did."
Terrible, terrible,
I
terrible.
hated that movie. I hated the ending of it. But here's what happened. We used to go over to my grandparents' place, and my cousins were not too far away. And I got baited into watching Friday the 13th, Part 2.
Okay.
I didn't want to watch it, but of course, because I was always under the impression something evil was going to happen. And if something evil happens, I want to see evil vanquished,
Okay.
you know?
Okay.
So we watched Friday the 13th, Part 2. I watched it like this. We had about 2 or 3 kills in that movie, but the moment Kirsten Baker goes naked into the lake, that's when my mom came in and turned the television off.
That's it.
That became the first time I'd ever seen a naked woman, was
Right.
Kirsten Baker.
Yeah.
And I would
She,
love to
she was the
meet her to
first.
tell her that.
She was your first.
Yep. But later on, they managed to sneak it back on. And I swear I wasn't going to watch the rest of it, but there was a killer still out there. I needed the killer to get vanquished. Well, I didn't get my wish. By the end of that movie, I did not get my wish. And I remember when on our way home, I was just sitting silent in the back seat, remembering images of a guy in a wheelchair getting a machete in the face and a couple getting shish kebabbed in a bed by a spear. And I was like, and anytime there was a woman alone in a movie, it was like, oh, they need a guy with it. Of course, with everything way women fight now, it's like, no, when they can handle themselves. Linda Hamilton and Sigourney Weaver, they don't care.
Right.
They can handle it.
Right.
But my older brother, what he did to get me into horror movies, he challenged me to watch Friday the 13th, the final chapter.
Okay.
He promised me Jason dies in this one. And he was right. And I watched the movie mostly like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like seeing blood and gore.
Mm-hmm.
And I still consider the final chapter of that and Jason Lives to be the two best of that franchise. Final chapter, easily the scariest, because I loved Ted White as Jason. But I got through it. And I was like, let's watch more. Now, of course, Jason did get dealt with in that one. Of course, they made more. It's weird because now I got the entire box set over here now, and I celebrate movies like Miss 45, Dress to Kill, and stuff like that. And I became somebody who went from not enjoying horror movies to somebody just kind of I interview a lot of people from I interview
Yep.
people from all kinds of movies,
Sure.
but horror films I find people are a lot more accessible.
What's interesting that you brought up, and this could be a whole separate show. I watched Bride of Frankenstein. That scared me. Now think of the level of that
Mm-hmm.
compared to kids who might have been exposed to Jason or Michael Myers or Freddy or The Exorcist as their first thing. I mean, Bride of Frankenstein, it's like a comedy. It's like so tame compared to all that stuff. I mentioned child abuse. When I took my kids to the movies, the first few movies they saw were Drag Me to Hell, Mama, Machete. I
I
mean,
hated Mama. I thought Mama was so bad.
but
Oh
the
my.
but the idea is my kids were I just remembered it was such a different reaction when the people in the audience went they laughed, they cracked up at it. So every kid is different, and what affects some, and some who grew up hating it maybe love it or were afraid of it or
Mm-hmm.
avoid it. And I just, it's a part of I think it's part of our makeup, it's part of our DNA. And to be able to interview people and get them to be part of what we do is just so exciting. It's so cool.
Yeah. Well, it's funny with me because my first interview on this podcast was with Tommy Wiseau from The Room. There's a horror film for you.
The Room, I don't know it.
Oh, gee, I'm
is that
joking with you.
is that the famous one that's supposed to be the worst one of all time?
Yep.
Okay, I do know it.
But he was my first guest on here, and I remember after that interview. I mean, if that had been it, one and done, I would have been fine. I got to interview Tommy Wiseau.
Hmm.
But I went back because I had an uncle that used to own a video store back from 81 to 88. And that
Wow.
is where a lot of the stuff I surfaced from. And my mind just went back to that video store. And I thought about all the women I had crushes on. And I wanted to see how many of them would talk to me. And I think the first two I reached out to were Adrienne King
Yep.
and Lisa Langlois.
Hmm.
Adrienne King responded right away, and I remember just leaning back in my chair, like, she said yes to an interview. She wants to talk to me because
Wow.
I thought Adrienne was just cute as uh cute as a rabbit in that film. I mean, always liked her, but Lisa, it's interesting. She eventually responded, and it spawned into a friendship, you know. And
Mhm.
And Zoe became my first tribute interview from Miss 45. That's why I discovered, hey, I could interview people, relatives of people who have passed away.
So smart. Yeah.
Yeah. And I still talk to her widow to this day,
Mhm.
and because I love this movie and I just want to do something with it. And so it kind of spiraled from there. I remember that first year I interviewed a lot of the females
Mhm.
because the Friday the 13th films, I think for most of them, I could pick a favorite female out of every one of them. And I'm like, I don't watch these for Jason. I'm sorry.
That's funny. Like,
you know?
just rewatched Halloween, and I
Mhm.
had completely forgotten the PJ Souls scene. You know,
I
uh,
want to get PJ Souls on here.
yeah.
Yeah, I got an autograph of hers I got through the mail, but I've heard that she's wonderful. However, somebody you might want to get, and I know you could get her for your next book, is Sandy Johnson,
Okay.
who played Judith Myers. She's extremely accessible,
Oh, cool.
and I know she would give you a list.
Cool. Cool.
She is awesome. If you ever do a con and get a chance to meet Sandy Johnson, who played Judith Myers, do it.
I
I've
will.
never met her personally, but she's been on the show twice. Actually, I sent her a bad cat calendar for Christmas,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Like I got a whole slew of people I could have you reach out to that I'm
Cool.
pretty sure would say yes. Sandy is a must, you know.
For
How
sure.
long did it take you to write that book?
All right. So that's not an easy answer because um, back around 2008, I started doing something online called National Horror Happenings,
Mm-hmm.
where I would get in tons of press release through the Dracula tour. I was very much in the horror scene, and I would get press releases and news on new releases, and I would review. It was news reviews, previews. It was an online horror thing, and it was read by thousands. It was really doing well, and somehow once a month, I started doing these top 10 lists. I stumbled on it. I don't remember how, but then I thought, well, let's do this on a regular basis, and I started accumulating these lists. And when COVID hit, I said, I've got 80 of these lists. Why don't I do a book on this? And I telling everyone I know, I'm gonna do a book over COVID. And they said, well, it's about time you read a book, Charles. And I go, no, not read a book. I'm writing a book. And I only needed like, 20, 30 more lists. And I got those within a month's time. So how long has this book been in the process? Believe it or not, 12, 15 years. How long have I really thought about making it into a book? Just since COVID. And it should have been out much longer ago, but there were issues with printing and publishing. And I guess this happens with everyone who's putting out a book. But it finally just came out, and I'm just so excited. It's such a pleasure to have it in your hand. Someday, if you ever write a book, it's all worth it for every amount of work and every mistake you found and corrected, and every bit of blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. Because when you get the finished product in your hand, and when you go on Amazon and read 5-star reviews for it, it's just such a great feeling.
Have you gotten Debbie Sue Voorhees?
uh, I have a Voorhees in here. Who do I have? Wait, I bet I do. It's a good.
Because she's the director of 13 Fanboy, and she's in Friday the 13th Part 5.
Is this Debbie Voorhees right here?
That is her.
She's in the book.
There you go.
He is in the book, and she gave us a great list, unnumbered. Most people do a 1 through 10. Hers were horror films that grab me, have strong characters, and she talks about those characters like in Young Frankenstein, Shaun of the Dead, A Quiet Place, Insidious. She gave me a great list. I'm so glad you mentioned someone. You
She's the
know,
director of 13 Fanboy, the film I'm a co-producer on.
that's amazing.
Did you
That's
get Adam Marcus?
no.
Okay, he's the director of Jason Goes to Hell. Great guy. Reach out to him.
Cool.
Yep. I'm going to hook you up with some people. I'm going to hook you up with a lot of people for your next book because I know people that will say yes.
Yeah. Most, you know what? Most do. Most do. Most want to be part of it, and they love the idea. Some just don't have the time. And
Frankly, I'll tell you, you'll love Sandy Johnson. I implore you, go after Sandy Johnson for a list.
will
She
do.
is a doll. She did a Doubtfire face challenge for me. It's for suicide and depression awareness
Hmm.
after Robin Williams had passed away. And it's like the ice bucket challenge, only you take a pie in the face
Okay.
and you nominate 3 people. And I was throwing it out to people to see if I could get the industry involved. And Lisa did one, and she did one with me, but Lisa did one with her son. Nancy McLaughlin did one in front of props from Jason Lives, which
Wow.
was really cool. And Sandy Johnson did one, and her husband was dressed up as Michael Myers. And she nominated Nick Castle, PJ Souls, and Felissa Rose. And
Wow.
she's trying to get that to them. Well, Felissa's going to be at Frightmare in the Falls, so I'm going to play that video for her
Cool.
because I heard Felissa's a real hoot to meet.
Sleepaway
Um,
camp, of course.
yeah, I've heard so many good things about her, so I'm going to play that for her. But yes, Sandy did one, and let me see, Rowdy Roddy Piper's daughter Ariel did one, and she's lovely. She's a lot like her dad, got a lot of the sense of humor. Um, and another wrestler, Tori Wilson did it.
Hmm.
Let me see. Oh, Ellen Udy from My Bloody Valentine did it. And I
Oh,
threw it out to her because she is a professional clown now.
oh.
And she walks on stilts and stuff like that. She does performances. And that was when I threw it out to her, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
So James Balsamo did one. And yeah, I've had a few people. You should do one.
Okay. I'm
And
glad.
yeah, do one and nominate 3 people, but nominate 3 people from the industry.
Yeah. Huh. So I don't mind getting nominated and doing that. I feel awkward nominating others in case they feel in public that they're called out and have to do it. I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. Perhaps.
you don't
Um,
have to nominate people if you don't want to, you know. It's
you,
a
you
it's basically an awareness thing, that's all.
One of the other actors from Sleepaway Camp, who was in the sequel and all that. I don't know if you know the name, Jonathan
Uh-huh.
Tilton. Jonathan gave us his top 10 list. Oh, everything's always backwards. I'm sorry about that. And Jonathan was in Sleepaway Camp and Return to Sleepaway Camp, and also Sleepaway Camp 5, The Return. He was in like a bunch of them. I didn't realize until I got his list that there were that many Sleepaway Camps. Nothing was as shocking as the first one, but that's one of the all-time, that's an M. Night, shocking twist at the end there.
Did you get Linnea Quigley?
I bet I did. I bet I did.
She's
You
a
know,
hoot.
got Kimberly Magnus.
Huh?
Uh, Kimberly Magnus, I got.
Uh-huh.
Did I get Quigley? I don't remember. I got Tiffany Shepis.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get Quigley? LMQ, LMNOPQ. If I did, I think I saved it for the next one, but it's not in this one. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. She'd be a good one to get. She's a scream queen. She's the scream part.
She's the queen of the Scream Queens.
I met her and she was on my show on my birthday in 2018. And she really gets into it. I'll tell you that. When she does these cons. I'm
Yeah.
going to see her again at Frightmare in the Falls. She's like uh, she's like a college kid.
Wow.
These, yep.
Cool.
She was a lot of fun. Yeah, there's all kinds of people I could connect you with to do a list.
Goodness.
You
Well,
worked with Tom Savini. Did he give you a list?
I didn't ask him, and I should have. I should have reminded him that we're in a film together. But there's some people who I always think I'm going to catch up with them at a con. Doug Bradley, Tom Savini. There's just some people that I used to see all the time. Rooker, John Rooker, Michael Rooker. I'm sorry,
Hmm.
Michael Rooker from Walking Dead. I'd see them at so many conventions, and it would be, hey, how's it going? Danny Trejo was another one. So I never bothered to get their list, thinking, okay, I'm going to see him at a con. I'll see him in the bar. I'll get their list in person. So I never really pursued it. And then the book's done, and I said, "Oh man, I forgot about this one. I forgot about Linda Blair's another one. I forgot about these people." But you know what? The book hopefully will do so well, and people will buy so many of them that there'll be, an exciting sequel in a year or two. But I hope people do really go to the website, Book of Top 10 Horror Lists, and order their copy. I'll sign it. They'll
I'm
get
gonna
some.
get a signed copy. Yes, I'm gonna get one. You sold it to me. You sold it, you know?
I hope I've
Yeah,
sold it to your viewers as well. I'm talking
yeah. Well, when
viewers.
this is ready, you could put it on your website, you could put it on
Right.
your Facebook page, put it wherever you want to.
Sure. Sure.
Um, I wanted to ask you more about your con experiences because I love asking those questions. Who who were some of your best experiences meeting? And I don't mean just best experience, but also your most surprising in terms of you didn't know what this person was going to be like and they just blew your mind.
So I went to a Rocky Horror Convention show,
Uh-huh.
convention event at the Calderone in Long Island. Shortly after I saw, no, it had to be way after I saw the film, but it was the first of the Rocky cons,
Hmm.
and every star was there except Meatloaf and Tim Curry. Every single one. And I didn't know, Little Nell, and I didn't know Sarandon, and I didn't know Bostwick. And so they're walking by, we're in the dress, I'm like, hello, hello. I'm not even getting autographs. I'm not taking pictures. And then, when Rocky Horror exploded, it was one of those things that I always kick my ass in the ass because I didn't bother getting their autographs. I didn't bother meeting them and taking pictures with them. But my best con experiences were probably at Horror Find, only because being on a panel with all these great people, and being not an equal, I guess, to the celebrities who are judging people in costumes and them saying, "Well, Charles, who do you think? What do you think?" Like I'm the judging person there who was making the decision. I go, we got to go with the kid. He's dressed as Jigsaw and he's in the bicycle. He's got to go with him. And then they all vote for him. That was probably one of the best experiences I would think, because I've done so many shows myself. you know, Most of the best experiences are events that I produced, and they're more
Hmm.
music oriented, than the horror ones. But we just had a paranormal convention, and there's a lot of people who I had never heard of, who are like monstrous names in monstrous was a pun, of course, monstrous names in the paranormal business. And that's a whole separate, genre that I didn't know about. Sean Austin, Barry Piro, these guys are so famous among paranormal people, and they were guests at the show, and then we had a party and some of them played guitar at it. It was really great. Every con has its own great special moments that you go away from, and I'd like to think that everyone who listens to your show and watches your show goes to them. And if they don't, they should try if they could. Yeah, bring a lot of money because you're going to want to buy autographs, you're going to want to buy books and memorabilia and action figures and everything else, and DVDs and on and on. But even if you don't, go there for the experience, hear the guests talk on stage, just see them walking by, and you're rubbing elbows with people who you see on the big screen and who you love. It's just a really great experience. I'm a big con guy. I love the fact that even though it took you a while to get into it, that I see that you love it as much as you do and try to go to as many shows as you can.
Well, that thanks goes to Lisa Langlois. Had
Yeah.
she not made the offer, because I always got homesick going anywhere.
Oh yeah.
I always got homesick. What was strange about going to Toronto is I didn't want to come home.
Oh, wow.
How strange is that?
Never wanted to go. Once you went, you didn't want to come home. Wow.
Well, I dreaded going, but I had to because Lisa invited me. Like, I live in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Our two closest cities are St. John and Moncton. I went to Moncton and St. John. I saw Avril Lavigne in concert, and I saw Hilary Duff in concert. I actually met Hilary backstage. She was awesome. But I dreaded having to travel there. And those are just a few hours away.
Yeah, sure.
And I dreaded until I got there. And I come home and I was like, phew. This offer, Toronto's a lot further away. And I dreaded, but yet there was a sense of excitement because I was like, I'm being invited by Lisa. She's going to meet me at Union Station. And, you know, after I get dropped off to unpack my stuff, I remember I don't know. I was just overwhelmed. I hadn't seen escalators since the 80s, you know?
Yes.
Going up on a plane didn't even bother me. You know, I'm the only one in my family to do it. I remember seeing Lisa for the first time because I'd always seen her in class of 1984 as Patsy. Like, there she was. And I remember she asked me, she said, do you want to drop your stuff off or do you want to get something to eat? And I said, well, I want to drop my stuff off. And then if you want to meet after and like she knows Toronto, I don't. And we met at a restaurant with her son, who was at the time a teenager. And she asked me a lot of questions about the Maritimes and about New Brunswick and about Fredericton. And because she'd never been out this way before. And I don't remember asking her so much about her career. I was like, I'm getting to know Lisa as a person, not as an actor.
So well.
And one thing that kept dawning on me in the back of my mind, I'm not feeling homesick. Why am I not feeling homesick? So when I went to bed that night, I woke up the next day. It was the Friday before the con. I was like, oh my goodness, I feel wonderful. How can this be? What is in that Toronto water? And I arrived on a Thursday because I knew the Friday Lisa was going to go get her photos and stuff like that. And I did two things here. One, I went to help her get her carry her stuff. But number two, it gave me another opportunity to see Toronto. And Lisa was able to teach me the tricks of the subway and the subways. And we went to some nice restaurants, you know, and I got to know her as a person. I did the con, Horror-Ramas, Saturday and Sunday that year, and met so many people, had a great experience. And I spent a lot of time. Here's one thing I do. We got Cineplex here. And you go to so many movies, you get so many points, you can get some free movies.
Okay.
I got over 20 free movies on my Cineplex scene card. And every time, I don't use them until I go to Toronto because Lisa and I go to the movies.
Right.
Yep. And if there's something, yeah. And one of the first things we always ask each other when we see each other is, any particular movies you want to see? And Lisa says, I'd like to see The Irishman. I think it's playing at such and such. Have you seen that yet? You know? And we ended up going to Jojo Rabbit, you know, and which wasn't playing here at the time. And it was just a great experience, you know. And I remember one of the best was the last Horror-Rama took place at the end of November into December, so started getting some snow. But they're starting to play Christmas movies, and there's a lot of retrospective theaters in Toronto. They were doing a double screening of White Christmas and Black Christmas.
Wow, genius.
White Christmas had people there. but Black Christmas was packed. But I remember I called Lisa and I said, "Would you like to go to this? I'll get you a ticket." She wasn't interested in White Christmas, but she wanted to see Black Christmas because she knew a lot of people in it because it was shot in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
And so she joined me for that. And I love the original. I hated the two follow-ups, mind you, but loved that original. And afterwards, the big thing Lisa was wondering was whether Art Hendel still had that jacket.
Oh, geez.
Well, I met up with her the following day, and she made a phone call to Art Hendel, and she wanted to know if he still had that jacket. I just sat there and listened. Apparently, he still does. But it was great. I have a lot of fun with Lisa when I go down there, and it's
That's so good.
yeah. So I had a blast at that first con. I attended the Filthy Cabaret because Mink Stoll was one of the guests, and there was a special screening of Pink Flamingos. Lisa had not seen the movie. I had seen it once. And again,
I
Lisa's response to it was, Mink was really young in this movie, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I've had such great. If you looked at my YouTube channel, I have in my playlist one playlist called conventions,
Mhm.
and I do a haul where I show the stuff that I got at the conventions and stuff, and I share some stories about things, and I got addicted. I got addicted. I got the bug. And you
That's a
started going what in the 80s?
70s and 80s, yeah.
They had horror cons going in the 70s.
They had, I can't, I'm trying to remember how long now. It's been probably 25 years, maybe.
Well, I heard that Comic Con started in the 70s, the
Right.
early 70s. That's what I heard. And it just
Right.
started with these like nerd people that just started in like in a basement or something. It just
Together in
grew.
a hotel basement. Yeah. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
find that so amazing.
I'm trying to see, I really got heavily into horror conventions when I started doing Dracula tours in the 90s because I wanted to promote them. I would stand at the door and just give out flyers to everyone who walked in, you know. And then I think Famous Monsters of Filmland might have been the first to have, some of their conventions. I don't really know. Fangoria, of course, had major weekends of horror. Chiller's been going on forever. I don't know when the first horror. I guess we can Google it and find out. I don't know when the first one was. I know I wasn't at the first ones, but I was at a lot of the early ones. Yeah.
Is Chiller your favorite con?
Uh, I think so. I think so. It's veered away from being strictly horror. It's a pop culture event more than anything else, and that's fine. Um, but it's my favorite because it's so huge, and I have so many friends who go. Now, mind you, when I started my haunted house, I stopped going to conventions. Most conventions are in October, and my haunted house is in. I got to be there if I'm acting, if I'm running it. So up until last year when I sold it, and I'm still involved in it, but I don't run it anymore. So I have time to go to shows again. Up through '98, I was going to every horror convention I could on the East Coast. From '98 through 2006, I didn't miss a show on the East Coast. 2006, I opened up the Fright Haven
Mm-hmm.
and stopped going to the conventions because I was running the haunted house. So this is a return for me after, 14 or 15 years of not being at conventions to go again. But you always love the ones you went to first, don't you? You always have, it's the music you grew up on, you love the most. The horror movies you grew up on, you love the most. So the conventions I grew up on were Chiller and Fangoria and some of those earliest ones. So I love those the most. Yeah. There's
Did you?
another one. There's another one I went to early on. It was called Monster Bash, and that's in
Okay.
Pennsylvania in the Pittsburgh area, which is great. That tends to skew towards the older, Universal Monsters, Hammer. It's not, slasher, and it's not gore. Um, and that's a different probably age group as well. And I love that one too. But if you give me a horror hound, you give me a horror convention, I want to be there.
Mm-hmm. I don't know whether you want to answer this question or not, but I'm going to throw it out there. Some people will answer it. Have you ever had? I haven't personally. So far, everybody's been wonderful. But I just listened to Death Curse Society, that podcast tonight, while I was cleaning before I came here. And they said they had their first bad celebrity encounter, and they said it was with Billy Zane. And yeah, they had nothing good to say about him. I don't know whether
He's,
that's a thing with him, but
he's
have you ever had a bad encounter?
Billy's going to be at DeadCon, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be at in the middle of October in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So I'll report back to you if he was a good guy or not.
Yeah,
Um,
they
I've
did
never,
not have a good experience with him. It was the only time they ever had a bad experience.
I don't remember having a bad experience with a horror person ever.
Mm,
No, I don't.
I haven't either, but
Good, good.
I hope, knock on wood, I hope never to. But I was listening to Death Curse Society tonight, and they do a good podcast, and they're talking about, I think it was Horror Hound, I think they were at, and they were talking about that, and I look at it this way: if somebody's going to be a quote unquote a dick, don't go. Like don't go. There are some people that absolutely loved it. Like some people go to a lot of them. I had met Dee Wallace. She was a hoot. Linnea Quigley. Love Lynn Laurie. Meeting Lynn Laurie, if you get a chance, she's wonderful. Of
Hmm.
Shivers.
Hmm.
There's so many people.
Very,
Yeah, but yeah, my experience has been great in this, and but I have got to order your book.
yes, I would love that.
Yeah,
If we,
hold it up here again.
before we go, it's www.bookoftop10horrorlists.com. And if you go to the website, it'll tell you how to order a copy so I can sign it for you. And
Hmm.
like you said, inside the book, you'll find 100 terrible lists from a Beatle, from a McCartney, from a Lennon sister, from a Karloff, from one of the Munsters, and I bet you can guess which one, from Scream Queens, from William Shatner, from stars of movie, TV, radio, print, from Rock and Roll Hall of Famers, from a Baseball Hall of Famers, and from so many other pop culture icons, some of whom are no longer with us, and some you'd never guess loved monster movies like we do.
Have you gotten Marley Peterson?
I have not yet. No.
She is the woman that doubled for Janet Leigh in the shower scene.
Wow.
I've had her on the show.
Great one.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll
Yeah.
try to. I'll reach out to her. Oh, I gotta mention. Did you ever get Roddy Piper?
No, you know what? I didn't get any wrestlers, and I'm friends with Tommy Dreamer. I was
Mm-hmm.
in a movie with him, Tiny's Halloween, October 31st, something like that. And he played an extra, and I was the lead in it, believe it or not. And him and his wife were in that. And I think I asked him for a list, but I never followed up. A lot of times you have to follow up and say, did you get my email? Are you going to send me a list? Do you need more time? But sometimes I don't. But I did not follow up on any wrestlers. There's only one athlete in the book, and maybe on the next one I'll do more of those.
I'd be interested to know if Jake the Snake Roberts has a top 10 list.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah,
Any of
yeah,
them, Hulk Hogan, any of the ones who are still with us to get a list would be cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I'm going to order a copy of that, and I'm going to try to get you hooked up with a couple of other podcasts as well. So,
I do that. I'll shoot
yeah.
you out
Um,
done some of the names you mentioned who I'd like to key on. That would be great.
well, what I'm going to do, I'll send you a list of people I've interviewed,
Okay,
and I'll follow it up by listing some people I think you should go after.
you got it.
Yep.
I'd be honored.
Yeah. Well, I definitely Sandy Johnson. I know she'll answer you.
Yeah.
Sandy is extremely accessible, you know,
Well,
and
I gotta do a second book because if you look on the cover,
mhm.
I mean, we see Pennywise and we see Linda Blair and we see George Romero, but the rest are all classic, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s. So the second one's got to have Jason and Freddy and Michael and Chucky. So the next volume has to be surrounded by a lot more of the contemporary monsters.
I'll tell you another person I got too. I got a couple of people that were involved in horror, and I got them before they passed. Like I had Dick Miller on the show
Oh,
5 months before he passed away.
wow.
I was so glad to get him.
Sure, sure.
Um, and I got somebody that originally turned me down in 2016, but I convinced her to come on in February 2020, and she passed away towards the end of the year, and that was Daria Nicolodi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
You
she
have
had
a,
turned she had turned me down in 2016, stating that she was getting tired of being asked about the 7 Dario Argento movies that she did and whatnot. What had happened is I had met Lamberto Bava at Horrorama 2019.
yeah.
And I knew she had not only been in one of Lamberto's films, but she was in the last Mario Bava film, Shock.
Oh, wow.
So I approached her again. It was on Twitter because I knew the 2020 would have been the 45th anniversary of Deep Red.
Okay.
And I think that was her best performance in the Argento movies was Deep Red. So I approached her about that, and I had mentioned the Babas. And
Hmm.
then I got, and this is a quote: "This interview will probably not happen." But I
Wow.
indulged her, and she got back to me, and she said she'd do the interview in 2 conditions. One, she wanted to express her absolute love for Mario Bava,
Hmm.
and she absolutely loved him.
Yeah.
And she, number two, she wanted to express her love for her daughter Asia Argento.
Wow.
And I said, absolutely.
Of course.
And we did talk some Deep Red, especially a little cigarette scene where we talked a little bit about Suspiria,
Hmm.
which she was one of the writers on. And
Hmm.
the only other question related to Argento I asked was what was like working with a young Jennifer Connelly and Creepers. But other than that, we talked about Mario, Shock, Lamberto. We talked about Asia. And by the end of it, she said to me, she said she was sorry she was so hard on me before. But I felt so bad when she passed away. But I'm so glad I reconnected and I got her on.
It's history, it's posterity. All the shows you've done, I mean, they'll live forever, and the people who are on them will live forever.
Yeah, I've it's hard when people I talked to Sean Clark about this. You should reach out to Sean Clark for a top 10 list. You know
No,
Sean?
no, I don't know him personally. No.
Sean Clark does Convention All Stars. He also does the Horror Hollows Ground. He books talent for
Oh,
conventions.
gotcha. Okay.
Yep. He books talent.
Hmm.
And he's somebody you should definitely reach out to for a list because he'd be one of the guys. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that.
That's all right. We're gonna wrap anyway, right?
We're gonna wrap anyway.
Because you and I, when you get two horror people on, we can talk forever, and we both have such great experiences with so many people that it's just one name triggers another, and it goes on and on. But we're gonna follow up. We're gonna do a lot of stuff together. You'll get credit for in the book for anyone that you can come through with, and I'll follow up with an email. And if I can get you people for the show, that would be great. You get people for the book, that would be great. But I just want to thank you for having me on.
Well, I love it when I get a message from somebody. It's just like I interviewed David Black earlier in the year, And David Black is an Australian filmmaker. I had no idea who he was,
Heard of him?
but he
Yeah.
just reached out to me and he said, "Do you interview Aussie filmmakers?" I said, "Sure."
Sure.
I didn't know from Adam, but I didn't say no to him.
Right. Very
And I
smart.
and I remember when I had him on, he said, "Well, we probably won't get any more than an hour, if that."
Uh,
We ended up talking for 2.5 hours, and he just kind of chuckled to me, I because we just got lost. Just because I didn't know who he was didn't mean it was going to be a short interview. And
right.
indeed,
Right.
he was surprised it went as long as it did. So I loved it when I got this message saying, "Would you interview Charles for
Yeah.
book of top 10 horror list?" And I said, "Sure, I've had authors on here before.
Right.
Why not?"
So
So
cool.
I was happy to do this. I was looking forward to it. I got 3 buildings I gotta go clean when I leave here, but I was happy to do this, and I'll get this out to you as soon as it's done, and I'll order your book as soon as I got a moment.
The
I got
best.
to go to work after this, but you know what? Next year, maybe around this time, when you got more stuff to follow up with, I'll have you back on.
I would love that. And by then, we'll have probably procured a lot more top 10 lists, and some of them
Hmm.
will be through you. So, we made this connection.
And if you want to, since I am a co-producer, one of the co-producers on 13 Fanboy, I wouldn't mind doing a top 10 list.
There you
I
go.
think I could do that. I think I could do that, make it interesting.
Okay. I
But
want
I'll
that.
definitely set you up. I think I could set you up with a lot of people too.
I might have to put 200 lists in the next book instead of just 100 and make the type a little smaller.
Or
Great.
you could do a third book.
Oh my gosh. You're making me do that much more work? I'm up for it.
There you go.
Double
I
thumbs up.
I encourage it. I
Thank
encourage it. Thank you, Charles, for
thank
reaching
you
out and coming on here. This was a lot of fun.
so much fun. You're a great guy and a true fan, and continued success with your shows and with all the celebs that you're hooking up with.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I'll put you in touch with people. I know I can get you quite a few. They'd be
Tremendous.
they'd be happy. They'd be people be happy to do it.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. God bless you and keep
Bless you well.
creating, keep doing what you're doing. And we'll do this again next year. And I'm going to order your book.
Thank you so much. Bye to
Absolutely.
yourself and to all your viewers. God bless.
Absolutely. You take care. Hold your book up one more time. Hold that right up there. There you go.
Book of top 10 horror
There you
lists.com.
go. There you go. I'm going to have one of those with your signature on it.
I hope so. Thank you.
Take care. You have a wonderful day.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.